almost 11, and my youngest is 4.5. And I was 30 when I became a parent the first time. So I was in my career. And then my second son was a surprise COVID baby who was born in 2021. So there's 6.5 years in between my boys.
Awesome. Well, I am Cynthia. I am an attorney in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm licensed in North and South Carolina. And I have two girls. And I also have 6 years, almost 6 years between my girls. My oldest is about to be 17 and going into her senior year of high school. And my youngest is 11, about to complete elementary school. So big times happening in our house.
Super exciting. So, since before everyone joined us, we were talking about conference, and not to give further FOMO to you, Kelly, but recognizing that CAI does bring some travel components to the Board of Trustees. In both of your roles, there's additional travel requirements, especially for you, Kelly, right now. So, how do you, having kids in school, how do you juggle being present for their events, being on the road for work? Like, what does that look like for each of you?
Well, to start with me, I don't think I told you what my job is today. I've been in the management side of the industry for 20, almost 26 years now. Um, I was very fortunate to fall into this right in college when I was 19 and spend time learning as an assistant and then a manager and then eventually running a management company. And now I serve as chief customer officer for a company. We have 9 management companies underneath our umbrella. So I travel all across the country to interact with our customers and our clients at each of our management companies, which I think we have just a little over 700 associations, about 75,000 doors across the US. So it's not an insignificant amount of travel. And I think there's always a guilt associated with going somewhere and what you're missing at home when you have that and what's going on. We'll say I am in a two-parent household, so my husband and my spouse is um, very supportive of my career. He also has a very high level job at Cisco Systems and IT, but we live in San Jose, Silicon Valley, near Cisco's headquarters, so he does not have to travel for work. Um, and he's been a very big support system for us in terms of travel and handling the kids when I have to travel. So there is that dynamic. My in-laws also live 20 minutes away and do help and support when I have to travel. Um, but that does not erase the guilt that I have as a parent when I am missing something that might be important for my kids. So I have missed um, awards ceremonies at school because I've had to be on a travel trip for CAI or for work. I've missed some of those things, or field trip days or something like that. I try to 100% make sure that I'm not traveling on a weekend and that weekend times are pretty sacred and I'm home for, for sure Friday night through Monday morning. So that I don't miss usually the weekend sports games and events. My kids both play soccer, and so those games happen on the weekend. That might change when my son gets to high school and the games are during the week, but I'll solve that problem when I get there. So that's kind of how I've balanced both of those things, but it's certainly not easy. And I'm certainly definitely feel incredibly guilty a lot of times when I miss things, but, um, you don't get the time back with your family. So I really do try to prioritize the important moments. So I will not be at annual conference this year, which is the first time I have missed conference in close to 10 years, because my older son graduates on June 4th from elementary school, and it's a very big thing for him. So I let the team know a year ago when I got elected that I wasn't going to be able to make conference. And it's very, very hard to not have FOMO about missing conference and something that's an important work event, but not. Also, I would never get over the guilt of missing that graduation. So.
Yeah, Kelly, I think you make really good points, right? When we work and we have a family, trying to juggle those two, I won't say balance because I never completely feel like I have balanced it. But juggle it and determining in that moment what is important for us. Where do we need to be in that moment? Is it a work thing? And I like you, try and limit the weekday nights. I don't travel as much. But I do get asked to attend lots of meetings. And so while it might not be travel, it might be they want me to attend a meeting late in the week. And I try and limit that as much as I can to how many I will do a week. So I'm not gone every night during the week. And I'm like you, my weekends, I'm so possessive of my weekends that I try. And if I do have to travel, be home either late Friday or very early Saturday so I can participate in things. My husband's also very hands-on. I'm blessed with that. We have a family calendar that we are religious about all of us updating so we can make sure that we don't have things that overlap. But I also rely on friends too. I mean, occasionally we do have things that overlap. I don't really have family close by. So I've got some great friends that I know I can call if I need help to cover something while Andy and I are gone. But it's super hard. I think what I try and do is stay wherever I am, I'm trying to stay present. This year I've really tried hard to, if I'm somewhere with my kids or I'm doing something with my kids, I'm not looking at my email. I put my phone down. I don't want to be looking at my email. I try not to respond to that while I'm with them because I realized I'm like half there and half not there, and it's just like not being there at all. So I've really tried to work on that wherever I am, whether it's work or home. I'm present in that moment, and then I shut it down and go to the next.
How do you, from a like obviously you take the time to be present for your kids, but how do you engage them with your professional world and engaging them and letting them know like your wins and your successes that you have in that work environment?
Cynthia, do you want to start? Your
Yeah,
two.
I love this one. Okay, so I mean, I talk about, well, they know what I do. I talk about it. I talk about the fact I travel to conferences and I speak, and I've really enjoyed that. We're very open, both my husband and I are, about what we do and why we're doing it and why we think it's important. So they can kind of see, it's great, Mom. I hate you can't be here for, the field trip. Actually, my daughter's on a field trip today. I hate you can't be on the field trip today, but I'm really excited you get to have this opportunity to talk to other people about a working mom and how you manage it. It's really neat to be open with that. And I also like they come to my office from time to time. My kids are actually going to be at conference for the first time ever. So I really can't wait to walk them around and have them just meet people that I've known for so many years so they can just have a little bit of exposure about what it is I do and why I do have to go to some of these conferences throughout the year.
I mean, my 4-year-old largely is, he just cares about Hot Wheels, cars, and monster trucks, and whatever goes on in his world. So that's a very different perspective than my 11-year-old. My 11-year-old has been, through a lot of career changes. I was running a management company locally, so I was in those night meetings 4 to 5 nights a week. When he was younger, in that kind of 4 to 5 range. So the travel for work and me being away is newer for him. But I work from home when I'm not traveling because we don't have an office near where I live. So I am not going into an office. So they are constantly in my office and sometimes participating on Zoom calls with my teammates, but largely the group of people that I work with in terms of culture, like we understand family comes first. So we all, as an executive team, really try to practice what we preach. So we all take time off for the family events when we're at home and not traveling. We ask about each other's kids. We know what's going on. We support that as a culture from all the way down to everybody who works with us. And so my kids are definitely a part of some conversations coming in, especially my 4-year-old has no boundaries. And then during the summer, when the 11-year-old's home, and they need a snack and can't seem to fend for themselves, they'll ignore dad and come find me. Um, but I will say my 11-year-old is very impressed by what we do in this industry in terms of helping people. I was also fortunate to be a board member and the board president for where we lived previously for 10 years. So he got to see kind of board meetings and what the HOA does and the things that it puts on and what board members do for the community because we did an Easter egg event. So he saw us volunteering and helping and setting those things up. So he has a sense of volunteering, helping out your community, and I think he gets that from his dad and I, who do that with different organizations around from us.
So Kelly, you touched on it a little bit, but with your current company, the culture of supporting the the parenthood dynamic and being present and doing those things. So for both of you, have you experienced along your career journey environments where you did not get that support and you had to draw a hard line, or even if there's words of wisdom that you could share with anyone else on the call of just having those difficult conversations with supervisors or leaders of where priorities are? Who would like to go first?
All right, I'm going to jump into this one. So yes, I've had positions. I'm very thankful to be at a firm where we do value family, and I fully recognize that if I need to leave for a field trip in the middle of the day, I usually can do that. I'm going to have to catch up on work later, but I want my staff to be able to do that also, and I tell them that all the time. But that's the culture here. It hasn't always been the case. As a young attorney at a different firm, I didn't really have that ability. That was really hard. And I eventually made a decision that that's not where I wanted to stay because they weren't as flexible as I needed them to be. And that's a really sometimes difficult conversation to have if you're at an organization that doesn't have the flexibility that you think you need. But I think what's important there is, number one, recognizing that, and you have to ultimately decide where it is you want to be. And number two, having a clear conversation with them to ask them if they're willing to be a little bit more flexible. Those conversations are very hard to have. But if we're not clear in those conversations, we don't know what the answer is. And sometimes the answer would surprise us. And sometimes the answer is a resounding no. And then, like I said, I made the decision to move somewhere where I did have more flexibility, but I was lucky enough to do that.
I think it's not an easy becoming a parent is a challenge. You really are changing your mindset from you and your partner or your spouse. And then all of a sudden you're responsible for keeping this thing alive. Whether you have pets or plants or anything else before that, the puppyhood stage lasts a little while, and then they grow up, the dogs are self-sufficient for the most part. But you can put them in a crate and like leave them. You cannot do that with a child. Like you have to keep them alive for the first year of their life, and then they start crawling and sticking things in electrical sockets, and you're just like, oh my God, So it's a challenge. I have definitely worked places that the loyalty was first to the company and not to your home life and family, or there wasn't necessarily respect about that time. And I've worked on teams where no one else on the team had a child at the time. And so they didn't understand the dynamic that I needed to leave because daycare was closed. And they were calling a meeting at 5 o'clock, but I needed to leave because I had to get to daycare before they closed at 6 to pick up my child. And I think it was detrimental to my career progression underneath that team potentially. Um, and so ultimately I have embarked on and chosen roles that allow me the flexibility to feel like I can be successful, but also still honor the commitment that I need to have for my family. That gets lost sometimes. When I was running a management company, and then I was running a management company during COVID, I was so dedicated to supporting my employees that I think sometimes to the detriment of my family. Like I was in meetings, multiple Zoom meetings a night, 4 or 5 nights a week, which is not great for my family dynamic. But it also, as we were starting to go back to the office, made me realize how much of my child's life, I only have one at the time, I was missing by being in these meetings multiple nights a week and being on the road so often, running that company, which was over a large geographic area. So I really decided to make a whole career shift at that point, and I wrote about it in an article for CAI. And that was very difficult for me to make that decision because I'm a very type A person. I love being successful at my job. I have a hard time with failure in myself. And so it initially felt like a failure to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm failing as a parent and in my commitment to my family in trying to be, so successful at work. And so shifting and trying to find what that balance looks like has been challenging. And I ultimately took a career break for about 6 weeks while I shifted and figured out what made sense for me. And then when I came back working for a company, I was very clear about what my priorities were and were going to be. And I picked a group of people, the partners that I work with now are very, very much the same way in terms of family priorities and what comes first. So,
So here's a fun one. Um,
That worries
obvi-
me every time she says something like that, right, Kelly? I'm like,
yeah.
so when we grew up, we didn't have social media. We could go out, play, do whatever. No one, criticized it or went running to our parents immediately to tell us what's going on. So, especially for you, Cynthia, and I know Kelly, it's starting to come for you, but what what are your concerns in being a parent, a mom, with the impacts of social media, and how do you balance that with work, family, the whole dynamic?
I I tell clients all the time, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. Some of it I love, but most of it I hate. We were very cautious with our oldest in starting the social media, but we didn't do it great because she got into that realm right as COVID hit and she had no interaction with friends. I mean, you couldn't, right? If we all remember, like you're stuck in your house, you couldn't do anything. So we probably were much quicker to allow her access to social media just because that's how they were communicating at the time. So she could still have some of those interactions while she was locked in the house. We've dialed it back a little bit. I mean, well, my youngest is 11, so she doesn't have social media yet, but she's not going to have it as early as my oldest. But one thing we do with both of them, and we have for many years, is we are very open and we talk about social media. We talk about the fact that we're learning it just as much as they are because we didn't have this growing up. And to have that instant picture of somebody at a party that you didn't get invited to is extremely difficult, right? It makes you feel like you don't have a friend and got left out. And we talk about how you only see the best of things on social media. You never see the real things on social media. And so don't be distracted by that. Take it for what it is, and understand the limitations surrounding it, because there are a lot. And we change our minds on what we do allow and what we don't allow as we adapt to different things just because we're learning it too. And we have to give ourselves grace and give my kids grace. But we talk about that all the time. And, I kind of have a little bit of a unique perspective from the attorney side of it because, I'll ask my kids stuff or they'll make comments. I'm like, where did you see that? Where did you hear that? That is not true. And, we have to remind them, like, just because you saw it does not mean it's real. You should question everything, do your research. Don't believe everything you see. And, even though you think those Snapchat messages go away and disappear, guess what? Nothing ever disappears. So be careful what you put out there.
Yeah.
So true.
My 11-year-old just got a phone at Christmas this year. So we're embarking on this new voyage together. Does not have social media, will not have social media. My husband and I are very clear about that. My husband is not on social media. I think he's on LinkedIn, but does not have any other social media besides that. I only have it because I have family across the country. So occasionally I'll share pictures of the kids and things like that to keep them sort of informed. But otherwise, we're not heavy users of social media at all. And so my 11-year-old, we both agreed that he's not allowed to get social media for a long time. Um, he has a phone because of the club soccer and the distance he travels and we're in a carpool, so other families help with that, and I need to be able to connect with him, but it's not for social media. The thing we deal with a little bit more is like YouTube, what he watches on YouTube or not doesn't watch on YouTube. And so we try to be pretty clear about that. And we actually really limit the amount of time he can be on YouTube, period. Apple is really good about letting you lock down things on the phone. So we do the best we can to lock those down. Um, I am encouraged by this younger generation and their desire to connect in person and not on social media. So there's sort of a rejection of social media kind of trend that's going on and a desire to connect in person. So hopefully they'll be better than our generation was with phones and social media as they grow up and age into, their teenage and adulthood years. So we'll see how that goes. But we're pretty particular about no social media for ours. He does have friends who are on social media or on TikTok or things like that, but we've just told him we don't believe that that's a good thing for you right now and have had that conversation. I think the other rule that we have is that he knows the password to our phone and we know the password to his. So that was the deal when we gave him the phone, is that he has to tell us his password. We have to be able to look at his phone at any time and see who he's communicating with, what they're saying to each other, and he has access to our phones as well. So we're open with him related to that because he has to understand that this is a trust thing for us with him, and that he also gets the same level of trust with us.
I love that you said that, Kelly. So the rule in our house is we have the same rule. We all share passwords. And the rule is with my kids, if I say, give me your phone, you aren't allowed to do anything with your phone. You have to immediately give me your phone. You can't close out of an app. You can't do anything. If you do, then you lose it. And it's gone for however long I want to take it for. But my girls have learned very quickly, like, no, when I say I need to see your phone, you hand it over immediately.
The school districts here are several of the schools have banned phones, and
Yep.
the school district right here is actively considering a policy. So I have a feeling mine will start middle school next year, that there will be no phones allowed on campus next year.
We have that here, or I'm in Lancaster County, so and they have it to where no phones, which is interesting. But I think, Cynthia, to your point, it has been, I'll say, fascinating to watch the difference in the social desire from a internet base versus an in-person base, like through COVID. So Cynthia and I's kids mine are a year younger than each of hers. So same thing, my daughter going through COVID, like that's what they had. Like there wasn't anything else. Meanwhile, my son's like, no, I need to run up the street and go chat with so and so, and I need to go here, and can you take me there? It's just a very different dynamic. And it kind of challenges your parenting a little bit because you're like, wait a minute, who am I dealing with? What personality? So with that, do you find yourself parenting in different ways with each child and their personalities and their characteristics?
Yes, my second child, his name's Oliver. We say Ollie is a mood. My first child was so much easier compared to my second child, like so much. Oliver is challenging in the best ways. He's also completely adorable, but then he's completely like the biggest pain in the butt, sometimes. And he will argue, and he doesn't just the whole because I said so thing does not work with him. Um, Whereas my first child would not be that way at all. And I mean, it's down to like how they sleep. You know, Oliver has much lower sleep needs than my older son Noah. Like Noah would knock out on a schedule consistently. That's his thing. He napped until he was like 5. It was glorious. Oliver has never been a great napper or sleep person. Like he got up this morning at 5:30. So that was joyful for all of us.
I mean, just like us, my kids are so different, right? I mean, I'm so different than a lot of people. And I think that there's some things we don't do differently with them that we just have a house rule. But we do make changes based on their personality and their needs. And I think that's necessary, just like I would do for somebody else, because they are so different, which still amazes me considering, we didn't do anything different with the second one.
I think my second one knows, he for sure knows he's the baby, I'll say no, he'll go ask daddy, daddy will say no, and then he goes to big brother, who big brother doesn't lock it down sometimes if he doesn't know to say no for that thing. So he gets a lot of things out of big brother or big brother's friends that are over that he's, running around with. I think that's the other thing is my 4-year-old spends a lot of time around 10 and 11-year-old boys because of my older one being home. So there's a lot of influences on my 4-year-old that potentially my older one did not have just because he was always around kids his own age.
I'm going to ask another question, but before I do that, for those of you that have joined us, if there's something that you would like to ask these ladies as well, go ahead and drop it in the chat and we'll start taking those questions. Um, Anything about their professional career or role as a mom. So feel free to put anything in there. But both of you have had successful careers. You've been parents for a while now. So if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what would be one advice, tip, nugget of information that you would share with them about being a parent, maintaining a career? Like, what would, if you would do anything different almost, like, what would that be?
I had a conversation with someone when I became a parent, a few months into being a parent, and I was really struggling with the guilt and the pressure to be successful at work and be a good parent and feeling like I was completely failing at all the things. And she told me it's normal that you've become a bigger person and your world has expanded to include this new little person and their needs. And it's okay to feel some friction as you're adapting to this new role and this new world that you've been in. And it is about blending all of those priorities together in a way that works for you. And that was, I think, really freeing advice. And so I would share the have the conversations and be open and find your village. Melissa and Cynthia referenced it, we communicate with each other on the daily basis and are supportive about our kids' successes, our career successes with each other, even though we don't live near each other. But we have become a little mini village that's very supportive for me from a work perspective, but also personally. And I think as a parent, we also have people who support us as well. But the only way you get that support is if you open yourself up to having those conversations and that support, because I think being a parent can be very isolating.
Very true.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Like, normalize the fact that none of us felt like we were doing anything well when we became a parent. I mean, I know I didn't. I felt like you did, but I felt like I was the first one to feel that way. And so I think recognizing that that's not true. Like, we put pressure on our shoulders that we don't need to put on our shoulders. It's normal to feel that way. Um, we need to recognize that it's okay for us not to do everything because we can't do everything. And we shouldn't feel guilty about it. And it took me a really long time to feel like that, because I had the guilt whenever I had to say no to somebody, whether it was work or home. I just put so much guilt on myself. Like, I'm so terrible. Like, why couldn't I just couldn't do it, or I would get less sleep and then it would be even worse. And I think we do that to ourselves. And I wish I'd recognized that feeling like that is completely normal. And that I shouldn't feel so bad about it or guilty about it. And it gets better because I think we learn to manage it better and we find our village, right? The people that we can talk to about it who can help us not feel that way. So I would say, don't feel like you have to do everything and find your village.
So Tori put in the chat, can you share any benefits you've seen in your children that you attribute to your career and work life?
My older son has taught me to be more brave and to take more risks. I've obviously mentioned I'm the first child, so I have this innate sense of I cannot fail. So I will just not try if there's something I think I might fail at. And he has really shown me that it's good to try and fail. And that's how we learn and we grow. And that's, to be brave because he tried out for club soccer, not knowing if he's gonna make the team. And that took a lot of guts and things to do. And when I was littler, I didn't do that because I wasn't sure I would make the team. So I never tried, but he did that. So I've really learned that from him. That's I think a lesson. My little one is very into play and to just kind of trying things, and they don't always work out. Sometimes the blocks break and the bridge breaks, but he has a good time doing it. So those are lessons I think I've learned from my kids is that, that I've forgotten as I've gotten to be an adult, is that it's okay to try and fail and learn something and move forward.
Okay, well, I'm going to shock the people on this call that actually know me, because I hate being in a situation where I don't know anyone. And it for years has been very uncomfortable for me to walk in a room, or even do a presentation where I may not know anybody in the room. I don't think of myself as a very outgoing person. And it's funny, like you fake it till you make it, right? Like, I just kind of had to do it when I was first starting out in my career. What I love seeing in my girls is that they don't see me that way. Like, if I said to them, like, I don't like walking in a room where I don't know anyone, they'd be like, what are you talking about, Mom? You go to annual conference and there's like 600 people in the room and you stand up on stage and you wear funny outfits, and why you're not shy. And I think because they've seen me do that, they're not shy. Like you said, Kelly, like, they're not afraid to take a chance or run for a class position, I would have never done any of that. I didn't do any of that when I was younger. I was just little old me, shy person. And I think them seeing me get out there and do things, even if they don't realize they're outside my comfort zone, they're seeing that and they're like, oh, I can do that too. And they do.
I think that's such a powerful message for your daughters.
Absolutely. And they're pretty amazing. So if you're going to be at conference, make sure to track Cynthia down and meet her daughters. They're
Yes,
fabulous.
come say hi. I'm so excited they're going to be there.
So
Yep.
I'm going to turn it on each of you to ask the other question that you're interested in, because obviously we've gotten to know each other over the years and in different ways and events and interactions, and we've seen the highs and lows with life. So what would be something that you would want to know from the other person?
Oh,
Tough
that's
one, I know.
I was actually, as long as I've known you, I'm surprised to hear that you're uncomfortable with not, or you're shy.
Right? I hide it very well. But
Especially with the outfit.
I still like sometimes I'm better now because I think if just one person in the room, if I know one person in the room, I'm better. And that just gets me going. But like if I think I'm showing up, I had to go to something a couple weeks ago and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna know anybody here, but I'm going. And you know, I put on a brave face and I walk in there and I mean I knew probably 10 people as soon as I walked in, but I didn't know that going in. My stomach gets all in knots and it's just crazy. So there you know my big secret.
Question, we talked about like village and building a village to kind of help you with your parenthood and with your children and all of that. I have a hard time when like you go to a birthday party for another kid at school and you know none of the other parents because you don't meet them organically because you're all doing drop off and pick up at another time. Like, how did you like build those relationships and connections with other parents? Like, were they neighbors or did you build them through school? Like, how do you build those
I love that.
villages?
So some of them were neighbors, and actually, it's really funny that we met some of my closest friends because we were all at the same daycare. And they were also working parents, both the husband and wives were. Um, and we were always the ones that were picking up our kids like at the last minute because I live about 30-45 minutes from the daycare. And if traffic's bad on the interstate, where Andy and I would be calling each other, like, are you going to make it before me? Who's ahead of each other on the interstate? Are we going to make it before 6? And we would see the same parents at the end of the day doing the exact same thing we were doing. And that's how we got to know them. And then we started to have a little community of, we would call each other when somebody was running late and we would just pick up the other one's kids. We put our names on the emergency list. We'd pick up the kids, we'd take them to our house and they would, when they got in from work, probably like 7 minutes later, they would come by and pick their kids up. That's how I made some of my best friends, just from something like that, because they were dealing with some of the same issues we were dealing with. And that was very helpful for us. And I think very helpful for them. I will fully admit it's hard for me to relate to a stay-at-home mom because I was never a stay-at-home mom and I couldn't do some of those things. So the birthday parties where they were just the stay-at-home moms, I didn't know any of them, but I would meet them. It just not in the same way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Kelly, how how have you been able to balance? I mean, I know your husband is very hands-on. Do you have any tips for how you've been able to balance? I hate that word. I'm sorry. But what do you do for help if you need help, if your husband's not available, or do you have a tips that might help people save some time around the house or at work?
Um, I'm gonna say something really bougie, but which is terrible, but when in doubt, staff it out. Like there is usually someone who is better or smarter at me at being able to do it. So ChatGPT is my best friend these days in terms of I open the fridge and I say, I have these three things in the fridge. Give me a recipe because I'm too lazy to go to the grocery store and I need to know what to make for dinner. So ChatGPT will help me figure out what I can make with these three things and put dinner on the table. My husband also likes to cook, so that does somewhat help. Grocery delivery really helps, which I know, or doing a pickup order. So I'm not like wandering through the grocery store. That really helps with like managing time because you can do that or a Target pickup order. Like I need to get all these things for the kids, and it's this like list that's been running in my head. So doing a Target pickup order, then I'm not wandering through Target, also spending money that I don't need to spend. Um, I did gift myself a house cleaner when I started traveling this much. So I do have a cleaner who comes in twice a month. We can keep the house clean in between that, but she does like the bathrooms and the things like that. So that part helps me because on weekends I want to be at my kids' sport events, running around doing those kinds of things with my kids and not spending half a day cleaning toilets in my house. So it's about where I chose to spend time and where we've budgeted and prioritized spending money. So, those are the couple of things that I've done in terms of my stuff. What about you, Cynthia? Because I mean, you're a partner at a law firm. Like, it's not like your job is not pretty crazy too.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some of the same things. When my oldest was younger, my husband and I realized like we were spending half the day on Saturday cleaning the house. And we did the same thing. We did set aside money, cut back in a couple of areas so we could pay to have somebody come help us do the big things, just like you do, at the house, the bathrooms and stuff like that. The other thing we do is we do a lot of things as a family. Like there's no, this is mom's job or this is dad's job or this is Caroline's job. There is like, if the house needs to get cleaned up, I'm not doing it by myself. And my husband is right beside me on that. It is everybody put down your phones, everybody turn off the TV. We need to go do, XYZ. We love cooking as a family. So, there was a while where I would be the one planning the meals and then I'd get home and I would immediately start cooking and then feed everybody. And then I was like, you know what? I called a family meeting, which we have from time to time, and anybody can call one. And I was like, look, this is just getting to be too much. And so we divide that up and we either cook together or each child and my husband, they pick a night and they decide what they want to cook and they're responsible for cooking it. And then if they've cooked, they don't have to clean. The other people will do the dishes and clean up the kitchen. And that has worked really well, both to give us family time together and to make them responsible and learn how to do things on their own, which I think is very helpful because they're not always going to be in our house.
I think, yeah, the other thing that we don't talk about, but that you read about as a parent is like the mental load and the mental load that moms carry for sort of the emotional well-being of the house. So we know all of the events that are going on at school. Like my son has a field trip next week and he needs $15 for said field trip for lunch and making sure that those kinds of things happen. But in community management, you also have a whole set of clients that you're interacting and working with, and you're making decisions on behalf of those clients all day long, trying to do the best that you can. And then you get home. And for me, like the whole figuring out at 5 o'clock what to make for dinner thing is exhausting. So if I don't meal plan or if ChatGPT doesn't tell me what to make, I cannot physically handle that decision. And it's like the tiniest decision in the whole scope of my day that has the least amount of ramifications financially in anything, but it is somewhat the hardest decision to make sometimes.
Yeah.
So that the whole decision fatigue by 5 o'clock is a whole thing as a parent.
It is absolutely real. There's so many times I tell my kids, like, I'm done making a decision. Like, you figure it out. Like, don't ask me any questions. So obviously in our industry, we talk a lot about burnout. In particular, there's the emphasis around manager burnout, the expectations, too much going on. So, what role do you think parenthood plays into it, if at all, or do you see any light at the end of the tunnel for parents in trying to minimize burnout by incorporating any tips and tricks or efficiencies just in life in general?
I always tell my teams, and I have to remind myself this too, the work's always going to be there. The emails never stop. I'm fortunate to have started in this industry sort of before we really used email a lot. We still faxed things and received letters. Um, so the whole emails coming in all the time and you're getting 200 to 300 emails a day as a manager, that's not going to change. AI will help address some of those, but the cutting it off at 5 o'clock and switching on to family mode or, whenever that time change is for people and, cutting it off in the afternoon to go do kid pickup and then picking it back up later, like that's fine. But understand that the work is always going to be there. And someone once told me, we don't cure cancer. We're not saving lives. Yes, we need to deal with the emergency things that happen, but the whole, we need to do this thing today, tonight, here at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. Sometimes that's not productive. And that thing will be there the next morning. So switch it off, give yourself the time around that, and the permission. I don't always follow that. I'm not always great at that either. Um, but I will say we all try to remind ourselves of that little fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I have a little bit more benefit, but I think setting those expectations, right? Nowadays, I think it's very easy for people to think, I'm going to send an email and get a response very, very quickly. And Melissa, Kelly, we all get lots of emails. Someone sending me an email is I'm not going to be able to respond to that very quickly or within the hour. But some people expect that. So I think part of it is I set the expectation of this is when I think I can have an answer to you. These are my general timeframes for responding. But understand, yes, there's some emergencies in our industry, true emergencies. They're not life and death usually. And if they are life and death, none of us can do anything about it. I can't help if there's a fire, you need to call the police department, but I can help with the insurance after the fire. But recognizing that is very important in trying to set those expectations. The other thing that's been very helpful for me is, I try and leave work about 4:30 every day. And there's a few hours where I stop working completely. And I'm getting my kids from school and I'm making dinner with the family and we're eating dinner and then putting my kids in bed. And then I will very often have to go back and do more work in the evening, but I try and do it after I have spent that family time with my kids and my husband, because I think that is extremely important. And that helped me when I started doing that, it helped me not feel like I was failing in both areas because I was always behind at work and never saw my kids.
So, what is one thing or the biggest thing that you feel like you learned from watching your parents in your parenting?
So my parents divorced when I was 10. Um, my mom worked multiple jobs after my parents divorced. She went back to school to become a clinical pharmacist and worked multiple pharmacy jobs, worked an extra job in retail on the weekend to pay bills. So I learned how to work my butt off from my mom for sure. Um, My dad was extremely successful in his career. He worked for the federal government and he always worked really hard from the time I was young. And he was always enormously proud of us. And encouraged us to be really ambitious and successful in our career. So both of my parents did that, but my mom taught me it was okay to have a village because as she's working these multiple jobs, she's having to depend on carpool and other parents to sometimes help get us to where we needed to go because she worked 20, 30 minutes away from where we lived. So that was helpful. So my mom sort of helped me give permission to ask for help and made it seem like it was okay.
My parents, I lost my dad last year, but my parents, were still married. Um, my mom is going to be 79 soon and she's still working full time. So, definitely they both had, big work ethics. But I think the big thing that I saw from them was they were a team. They there was never, like I said earlier, there's never any, this is mom's job or this is dad's job. They both jumped in whenever they needed to. And sometimes it was, one of them would be home taking us places, and sometimes it might be my mom, and sometimes it might be my dad. But they shared those responsibilities. And I think that was very valuable for me. And Andy and I have kind of continued on with that. There's no, unless it's a job around the house I really hate, which he does for me because I can't stand it, like washing dishes. He just knows I hate it, so he'll do it, but I'll do it if I need to. But we act as a team. And so I learned that from my parents, and I think that's been really helpful.
That's awesome. Well, we are coming up on the end of the hour, so I first and foremost want to thank both of you for joining us and sharing all your insights into parenthood, motherhood. I hope that everyone that joined us today got a little nugget of information that you can utilize in your day-to-day parenting, professional leadership, any and all things, because we all face those challenges. So again, thank you to Vantica, our gold sponsor this month. Next month, our other partner in crime with CAI is Brian Butler. So we will be looking at the fatherhood side as part of his discussion. So we hope that you join us in June. If you are not signed up to receive emails, make sure you go to the website in order to do that, as well as register for the upcoming wellness hours. But I thank everyone for joining us, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Actually, Thursday in the Philippines, I guess now.
Thank you, Rio. It was
Yes,
so
thank
nice to
you.
have you in the middle of the night.
Thank you, everybody.